Hello everybody, my name's Ruth Stuckey and I'm the subject coordinator for HBS5OHC. Welcome to you all, and particularly to those of you who are joining our course mid-year entry and this is your first subject. This subject looks at the fundamentals of OHS management of hazardous substances in the workplace, and the first module is an introductory one where we look at the development of this area and some of the underpinning concepts. We always have a copyright declaration on each of our modules, and we need to take this seriously, so you can download and use it for your own purposes, but you mustn't reproduce it. The objectives of the module are listed here. At the end of the module you should be able to describe the relevance of occupational hygiene and hazardous substance management to your OHS practice. You should be able to communicate the application of risk management systems in relation to chemical and biological hazards, and understand the conceptual application of airborne exposure standards as part of risk assessments. Know where to find resources and apply them, and also when to call on and how to use expertise in this area. We're going to do this module in 3 different recordings, and there'll be some activities to undertake at the end of each of these parts. First of all, we'll introduce the whole area of occupational hygiene and management of hazardous substances, and second section will be looking at perception and quantification of risk, which will be a review for some of you who've already done OHA. And then we'll look at exposure standards and information sources. There's a number of readings for this module, and these will link with activities that you'll be asked to do, and it's important that you actually do all of these and prepare your answers to share on our Collaborate session. So these readings and activities will underpin what we discuss on our Collaborate session. First of all, looking at occupational hygiene, which is the science concerned with the identification, assessment and control of environmental factors in the workplace which may cause illness, impaired health and well-being, or significant discomfort or inefficiency amongst workers. The examples of environmental factors include chemicals such as solids, liquid gases, vapours, dust, mist, smoke and fumes, or biological factors such as microbes, viruses, bacteria, moulds, pollens and parasites. And occupational hygiene is about looking at the nature of the exposure to these substances that workers deal with, and then how you manage those if they're hazardous. There's quite a long history of occupational hygiene, and this is discussed in one of your first readings, the Quinlan, Boyle and Lamb one. It's a long-established approach to occupational health management which is concerned with the identification, measurement and evaluation of hazards and the development of procedures for their control or elimination. The development of this field is often traced to the emergence of large-scale chemical manufacturing in the late 19th century, when scientists and practitioners from medicine, engineering and chemistry were brought together to reverse the growth of industrial disease. However, there's a number of authors, including Carter, who contended the field has far older roots, arguing that industrial disease prevention practices in the workplace, such as grinding to reduce dust, could be readily characterised as occupational hygiene. And these have been traced back to the 1720s in Britain, or the very beginnings of the early Industrial Revolution. And the engravings that are on these next couple of pages demonstrate some of these practices. By the early 20th century, occupational hygienists were at the forefront of identifying and establishing a list of hazardous substances together with their exposure limits. The development of the discipline was greatly stimulated by the event of World War I, when health practitioners contributed to the improvement in the productivity and health of the workforce, especially that of munition workers, where Europe led the US in this regard. At this time, occupational hygienists tended provide a secondary service to medical practitioners, being primarily concerned with the identification and control of the sources of health problems which were already diagnosed by doctors, rather than involved in the act of prevention through comprehensive periodic surveys and evaluation of the workplace. In the UK, for example, doctors carrying out periodic medical monitoring would be responsible for diagnosing the first signs of the absorption of the toxins, and the intervention of the occupational hygienists would follow these positive diagnoses. However, World War II saw a rapid expansion of occupational hygiene in the interests of so-called manpower conservation, which I interpret as keeping the troops healthy, and rules and regs were developed for the handling of toxic substances and a more preventive orientation taken through the design and coordination of various safeguards against harmful exposures. They're now the discipline who are first-line specialists responsible for the minimisation of occupational ill health in the workplace. Contemporary occupational hygiene is an environmental science which concerns itself with physical, chemical and biological hazards to workers' health. It generally focuses upon physical illness and disease and devotes comparatively little attention to subjective health and occupational injury, and also psychosocial health as we talk about it these days. In their attempts to protect the physical health of workers, occupational hygienists address problems relating to toxicity, biohazards, airborne contamination, radiation protection, ventilation and the control of noise, vibration, light and heat. Hygienists also generally work closely with medical practitioners in the process of diagnosing health problems and identifying probable causes, but are expert in the management and control of physical hazards in the workplace. Since the 1980s, hygienists have also collaborated with engineers and others to better manage explosions, fires, mass emissions and other serious incidents relating to major hazard facilities, such as chemical plants, although this area has also generated a specialist literature of its own. The Australian Institute of Occupational Hygiene website defines occupational hygiene as generally defined as the art and science dedicated to the anticipation, recognition, evaluation, communication and control of environmental stresses in or arising from the workplace that may result in harm to workers. This subject aims to increase our understanding and identification of physical hazards that are commonly assessed and addressed in the context of workplaces in OHS and hazardous work environments. Occupational hygienists have particular expertise in this area, and we need to work alongside them. And to do so, it's important that we understand when and how to appropriately manage and use their expertise and skills to enhance our systematic management of hazardous substances in the workplace.